What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to another episode of SLC Puck. I'm your host, Austin Facer, and you are tuned into your day one source for everything you need to at least pretend like you know what you're talking about when it comes to the Utah Hockey Club, and maybe just all things hockey and hockey in general here in Utah. Here we are, episode 23. It's our Jordan episode. Michael Jordan did not play hockey, but if he had, I don't know, maybe he would have been good. I don't know. Hockey's a hard sport to learn how to play. Just because you're good at basketball doesn't mean you're good at hockey, you know. I think Michael Jordan found out just because you're good at basketball doesn't mean you're good at baseball, you know. But hey, that's an argument for another day. Well, welcome into the show. Please like, comment, subscribe. You guys have been killing it, crushing it, sticking with me, even when I make horrendous mistakes like I did episode 22, and I'll touch on that a little bit more at the end of this episode. But again, the support has been incredible. I appreciate you guys. Go ahead and tell a friend. Tell your friends to tell friends. Have them tell 5 friends. Is there any way we can turn this into an MLM, a multi-level marketing company? That's kind of a thing here in Utah, right? People are really into those. I don't see why we can't. If you are in an MLM or know how to set those up, you know, please get in touch with me. We'll figure out how to turn SLC Puck into one of those. Maybe merch is the way in. If you want merch, go ahead and check it out. It's at slcpuck.shop. Here's a fun thing. If you order some merch, I immediately get a notification on my phone. And from the app I use to, you know, set the shop up, I can then send you like a video thank you message. And I've been doing that with everybody who's been making purchases. So if that's part of the fun, right? Not only are you getting some cool merch, you're getting a little personalized note from me when you make a purchase on slcpuck.shop. So if that's not reason enough to buy, I don't know what else to tell you. But here we are, episode 23, July 10th. Now, not to get back into everybody's favorite topic of discussion on the show, municipal issues, but that's what we're going to be talking about here at the top of the show, because yesterday, Smith Entertainment Group, the ownership group that owns the Utah Hockey Club, which they will later call the Utah Yeti, mark my words. They also own the Utah Jazz and the Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals, all those guys. But anyway, big move for them. Obviously, they've been pitching some renovations to the Delta Center. That's much needed, but they've also been putting together a plan, not only for that, but also a larger entertainment district around the arena. They've been pitching that. They showed that off. I believe it was maybe a month, maybe longer, in a city council meeting. But they took a big step forward in getting that project going. Last night, Salt Lake City Council approved their plan. They're going to send a 136-page document to the State Committee for approval. Expected to be no issues after that. City Council will vote to approve a 0.5 sales tax increase, do some zoning changes for the area, and Smith Entertainment Group will then have $900 million in public funds to play with to renovate the Delta Center and invest in the area immediately surrounding it, particularly the area 2 blocks east of the Delta Center. And I know you're thinking, holy mother of pearl, what, $900 million so that Ryan Smith can have a cool new arena? I understand why you'd say that, but I'm going to refute that here in a second. But I think it's also important to note that Smith Entertainment Group is going to put up $3 billion of their own money to this project. It's going to be taking place in phases. This first phase is going to focus on the Delta Center and the 2 blocks east of it, and also the Gateway has been thrown into this as well. I don't think that was originally part of the plan. The other phase that we have talked about on the show that goes even further east towards City Creek Center would include a Brabenel Hall, Museum of Contemporary Art, Salt Palace, all that. Those properties are actually owned and managed by Salt Lake County and not Salt Lake City. So they need to come to a separate agreement with Salt Lake County for that, and that might not happen until next year. But anyway, they're going to get off and rolling. Obviously, the big thing, I think, in this that affects the Utah Hockey Club most directly will be the Delta Center renovations. And we have a little timeline here. I'll just put it up here on the screen. As you can see, this was tweeted out by our buddy Carter Williams at KSL.com. Just kind of shows the schedule, how things are going to unfold. Again, as I have said on the show, due to my intrepid reporting and just sort of regurgitating what I've heard, the Delta Center is going to be redone in phases. The first phase, 2024, they're not going to have a lot of time to get things done. They're going to drop the puck in October, but those little renovation milestones for this year will be hockey locker room, which we've talked about, some more equipment, some seating, but mostly a lot of prep for the major work, which will start in April 2025, assuming the Jazz or the NHL team aren't playing in the playoffs. I think it's very safe to say the Jazz probably won't be in the playoffs. I am of the opinion that the Utah Hockey Club will be a contender for the playoffs, so they might have to push this timeline back a little bit. It would be funny if they threw a big monkey wrench into all these plans by playing in the Stanley Cup final in June. That would sort of, as fun as that would be for the Utah Hockey Club, as much as people would get excited about it, that would cause big issues in the Delta Center renovation plans. But hey, if it happens, it happens, and God, that would be fun. So you can see here, just like, April 2025, again, going to be done in phases, so they're going to demolish and rebuild the seating structure. Again, I think inside and out, the whole Delta Center is going to be completely redone. There's going to be new foundation work. Says here new retractable and fixed seating on the north end. So again, they're going to do some geometry tricks to make it fit both a basketball court and a hockey rink. It looks like they're going to do the north end first, complete that 2026. There's going to be a new parking garage. That if you've been in the Delta Center, there's like that ramp that goes down. They're going to turn that area into a parking garage. I believe that's what I've seen on maps. And then they're going to do some enclosure work, shell work there from 2025 to 2026. Then they're going to move to the south end, complete the construction on the garage, add some more premium space, sort of fix it up, get it looking better in 2026. And by the time they drop the puck in October 2027, that's when you'll have your shiny new Delta Center to enjoy the Utah Yeti, maybe defending their Stanley Cup championship at that point. Who the heck knows? But that's the timeline here. Again, big step. If you're following the hockey team, where the hockey team plays is obviously a big issue. And I mentioned I was going to refute the point that has been made about, why does Ryan Smith need public money to work on this little hobby of his, owning sports teams? Well, because that's the way it works. In every instance of a professional sports team, building a new stadium, building a new arena, moving into a new market, this is just kind of how the game is played. If you're a sports fan and you want to have a professional sports team in your market, be prepared for whoever is funding that to get some help from the government and from the taxpayers, because sports teams go to markets where they have that kind of support. And there are many cities all over the United States and probably a few in Canada who would love to have a hockey team. And believe me, if Gary Bettman didn't have the reassurance from Ryan Smith, and I'm certain from the Utah government leaders, the Utah Hockey Club would not be here. They wouldn't be dropping the puck in October. But because they have those reassurances, they have the support from the government leadership, they're going to get the team. The team is here. That's just the way it works. But in another point I would make is that the hockey team and the stories around it, the Delta Center, how it could impact the Utah Grizzlies, the Maverick Center in West Valley. The hockey team is a bigger story than just a bunch of guys getting on the ice in Salt Lake and playing against the best in the world. It's a story that affects everybody who touches Salt Lake, has anything to do with Salt Lake. This entertainment district is, I think, something that Salt Lake desperately needs to be a major power, a major economic power in the Western United States for sure. I think it's going to have really big rippling effects on a lot of people, a lot of industries. A lot of good jobs are going to be made possible through this. So it is a big deal. And that's why I've said this multiple times, is that this story around the hockey team is, again, way bigger than just about sticks and pucks. It's about reshaping Salt Lake which I contend, outside of Centerville, Utah, where I was born and raised, is the cultural capital of Utah. But so that's been our update here on what's happening with the Utah Hockey Club. Obviously, other things. There's been some signings lately, some two-way deals that have been made. But I don't really want to waste a lot of time talking about guys who are going to be on the end of the bench or playing in the AHL next year. You know, the point of this podcast was really to educate the fine folks in Utah, in Salt Lake, wherever. I know I have some listeners outside of Utah. I had someone comment on my last episode. They said, Guten Tag from Germany. And I'm like, holy mother of pearl. Again, like, well, someone from Germany is tuning into my dinky little show on YouTube. Is there nothing better to do in Germany than listen to some guy in a basement in Utah talk about hockey? Evidently not. But hey, I appreciate you for being here. Thank you. Gracias. That's what I said. I was trying to be funny. But again, what a big tenet of this show, I'll say, is to educate people who maybe don't know a ton about hockey, who just know that it's coming, that the NHL will be here shortly. They want to be up. They want to know why they should be excited. They want to know, like, what is this thing? And I get questions from friends all the time, because I was like one of the only people in my close friend group who played hockey. So a lot of my good friends know me as the hockey guy, and I get texts from my friends all the time, like, "Hey, what's this? What do they really call their jerseys sweaters? What's a chirp? How does icing work?" I get questions like that all the time. And so that leads me to a new segment of the show that I'm going to title off the top of my head right now, Austin's Education segment, okay? Austin's Hockey Education segment. Education series, maybe, because we'll continue to do this throughout the show, especially during the dog days of summer, when we don't we're going to run out of things to talk about, shortly. We're going to be pulling content out of thin air and out of our butts. But today, what I want to, and we'll get into some other stuff too. I would love to show you guys, like, sort of how the rules work and all that, because I know there's a lot of people who are watching the show and don't know a lot about hockey and still want to get into it and get excited, and that kind of stuff is helpful to know. But someone asked me a question the other day. It was a friend of mine, and they were sort of just learning more about the NHL and its history and all that. And they're like, so what's the deal with the original six? Like, what is that? And like, why does that matter to hockey people? And so I thought that would be a good first topic for Austin's Hockey Education series. And I'll just dive in by saying the original six. This is how I should frame it. Okay. I think a lot of people around here really enjoy college sports, college football, college basketball is a good one. And I'll use basketball as a metaphor here. We talk a lot in college basketball about playing against the blue blood programs, those elite top tier institutions. They win the majority of the national championships. They get the big recruits. They have the big name coaches. And they're talking about, basketball programs like Kansas, Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina. They weirdly all wear blue. I guess that's why they call them that. I think you could probably throw UConn into that equation now. But that's really who the original six are for hockey. They're the blue blood programs, and there's a lot of history behind these guys, and it's a specific set of teams. I'll just to put it simply, the original six teams. These aren't the first six teams in the NHL. That's sort of a misnomer. This is something that I got clarified for me when I was doing more research on this. But this is the set of teams that really set the stage for the modern NHL. They were the only teams in the NHL, actually, from 1942 to 1967. So for 25 years, the NHL only had six teams. And this was the largest period in the league's history without any expansion. The reason why 1942 is sort of that year is because World War II, if you know anything about American and world history, the original NHL lost a bunch of teams just due to economic strain and guys getting shipped off to war and all that. So World War II dies down. These are the six teams that sort of set up what would become the NHL we know and love these days. And those teams are the Boston Bruins, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Detroit Red Wings, the Montreal Canadiens, the New York Rangers, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, I'll get into a little bit about each team just to give you new hockey people a little background, something you can talk about around the water cooler at work tomorrow. But if you are a hockey person and you have been following the show, I don't know, just for the hell of it, I'm going to let you check out now. But you have to promise me if you're leaving now because you know I'm going to talk about stuff that you're already aware of. You have to go share something SLC Puck related on your social media, okay? That's the promise you and I are making right now. I will let you leave. You can get on with your day, so you don't have to listen to the rest of this podcast, but you do have to help me out, okay? Do we have a deal? Pinky promise, all right? Okay, well, let's dive in. Again, just another quick note here. Since I did the research, I might as well say it. The NHL had a major expansion in 1967. They doubled in size to 12. They added the Los Angeles Kings, the Minnesota North Stars, Oakland Seals, Philadelphia Flyers, Pittsburgh Penguins, and St. Louis Blues. Obviously, two of those teams came and left. The North Stars and Seals. The Wild are back in Minnesota. I guess you could say the San Jose Sharks eventually replaced the Oakland Seals. So anyway, let's dive in to a little bit about each of the original 6 teams so that you can have something to say you know about hockey. Okay, let's start with the team that I think people would probably equate to the New York Yankees of hockey. Okay, and that team is the Montreal Canadiens. And I just have a couple fun facts about each team, just so you feel like you know a little bit more about hockey than you did before this episode. The Canadiens are the oldest professional hockey team in existence, so they're the OGs. They have a bit of a nickname too that us hockey folks know and love them by, which is the Habs. I believe that's just some sort of abbreviation of the French pronunciation of something. I didn't get too into detail, but you don't need to know why. Hockey fans call them the Habs from time to time, HABS. And what makes them kind of the New York Yankees of hockey is that they've won more Stanley Cups than any other franchise, much like how the Yankees have won more World Series titles than any other team. They've won 24 Stanley Cups up there in Montreal, but their last one wasn't. It's been a while since they won one. The last one was in 1993, which also makes them the last Canadian team to win a Stanley Cup because no other Canadian team has won a cup since then. We've been keeping it right here in the USA. God bless America. How do you like them apples and all that stuff? And here's something. I wish my mom was in the room to hear me say this. The star of that team in 1993 was none other than Mr. Patrick Roy, as she would call him, Patrick Waugh. But my mom thinks she's funny by calling him Patrick Roy. So yeah, when the Canadians come to town, that's obviously a big deal. Hockey people know and love the Canadians very well. Let's get in though to the next team on my list, and it's actually a team that will have a very important place in history for the Utah Hockey Club, the Chicago Blackhawks, because they'll be Utah's first ever regular season opponent on October 8th at the Delta Center. And just to tell you some fast facts on them, I said it when the schedule got released. They're a pretty horrific team right now, but they're led by Connor Bedard, who's their teenage superstar. He won the Rookie of the Year trophy last year. He's been one of the most heralded young players in quite a while. They see him as a generational talent. They've won 6 Stanley Cups, and here's a little bit of more recent history. The Blackhawks were probably like the NHL team of the 2000s. They kind of dominated that decade. I think them and you could probably say the Pittsburgh Penguins were probably the 2 elite teams of that decade. They won 3 Stanley Cups in the 2010s alone. They were led by their duo Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, who have since moved on from the team. But they won Stanley Cups in 2010, 2013, and 2015. The more recent history around the team has not been great. They've kind of been rocked by scandal. Not going to get into it here. This isn't a Blackhawks podcast, for hell's sake. But go ahead and read about it if you care. But that's just a bit about Chicago. We'll keep it here in the Midwest of the United States to talk a little bit about the next team, the Detroit Red Wings. and they can boast that they have more Stanley Cup victories than any other U.S. franchise in the NHL with 11. And the Red Wings were a team I remember well from my youth when I was coming up as someone who was very interested in hockey, because in the late 90s, early 2000s, the Red Wings were like the dogs. They were like the Chicago Bulls of the NHL at that period. They had a crazy team. Steve Yzerman, Nicholas Lidstrom, Sergei Fedorov, Brendan Shanahan, the list goes on and on. They had a really crazy team in 2002. They had like 10 future Hall of Famers on that team. Brett Hull, I think, was on that team as well. So they won the Cup that year. Their most recent Stanley Cup, though, was in 2008. And just to tell you like a fun fact about the Red Wings, in case you didn't know this, what they are famous for, especially as a fan base, is throwing octopi, onto the ice during for like big moments, like maybe like a big win or like a goal. The fans there in Detroit love to throw slimy, disgusting octopi onto the ice. And the way that story took place, this was a tradition that started in 1952. The owner of a local fish market threw a octopus onto the ice because it was symbolic. You know, the 8 legs represented the 8 playoff wins that they needed to win the Stanley Cup that year. They went on to sweep their playoff series and won the Cup in 1952. So that tradition became crystallized at that point. But imagine being like one of the fans who takes that responsibility upon themselves to bring an octopus into the arena. You know, because, I mean, technically I think they have to stop them, you know, because it is somewhat against the rules to throw things on the ice. They still do it, and I'm sure they like the lore around it. But someone takes it upon themselves to go to a hockey game, to drive their car to the arena, to park it, to walk through security, sit in their seats, get a beer, all with a disgusting octopus between their legs and in their pants. So that's how committed that fan base is. Will we have any psychos who cheer on the Utah Hockey Club doing that? Time will tell. And what will we throw on the ice? I don't know. What's our state fish? Is it like the rainbow trout or something? Maybe someone will bring like a baggie of brine shrimp from the Great Salt Lake and put it down their pants and walk into a game with that. I don't know. People do crazy stuff. Like in Nashville, they throw catfish on the ice. So someone is walking into the arena with a catfish in their pants. Florida also, their fans have kind of a fun tradition, but theirs is a little more benign. They just throw plastic rats onto the ice. So anyway, when you think about throwing things on the ice, the Red Wings, those are kind of the OGs of that movement. We'll stay here in the U.S. and we'll talk about the Boston Bruins next. They're the 4th of the original 6 teams that we'll talk about. And they're the oldest team in the NHL. And I think what's fun about Boston is like how like crazy those people are about hockey. I mean, those people are crazy about everything. They're crazy about the Celtics. They're crazy about the Patriots. They're crazy about the Red Sox. That same passion is maintained when it comes to hockey. They love the Bruins there. They've won 6 Stanley Cups. They've had some really good teams, even very recently. But what's fun about maybe casual hockey fans or new hockey fans is how prevalent the Bruins have been in some of our favorite pop culture movies, especially comedies from the 90s. Cam Neely had a very big. He was an enforcer for the Boston Bruins in the 90s, late 80s, and he had a big role in the movie Dumb and Dumber as Seabass, who we all know and love. That was actually a Boston Bruins player who played Seabass. And of course, when I think of the Boston Bruins logo, I think about Happy Gilmore, you know, where Adam Sandler wore a Boston Bruins jersey to play golf, you know, in that funny movie. So the Bruins have made a little bit of a mark culturally for people who don't know and love hockey but love funny movies. So I think that's a cool note. But again, they've had some great teams recently. Their team in 2022-2023 season set the NHL record with 135 points. Now that's team points. That includes like 2 points for a win, 1 point for an overtime loss, all that good stuff. So They were the best regular season team ever in NHL history, but they lost in the first round of the playoffs that year to Florida, and that sort of started Florida's run as a dominant team, which culminated in their Stanley Cup championship this last year. But they're a fun team to watch. They've got lots of personalities. Brad Marchand, probably the most notable. Eric Jensen and I talked about this on episode 2 of SLC Puck. He's a rat. He's a rat, and he is someone that's easy to hate, but also still pretty fun to watch. So it's a bit on the Bruins there. We'll stay there. We'll stay here in the northeast section of the U.S. to talk about the 5th original 6 team here on my list, the New York Rangers. Now, the Rangers were the first team in the U.S. to win the Stanley Cup. And here's what's interesting about them. They did that in their second season, 1928, which set the record for the fastest championship by an expansion franchise ever. So, if the Utah Hockey Club wins the Stanley Cup this year, they will have broken the Rangers record for fastest championship by an expansion franchise. Time will tell if that happens. But just to tell you a little bit more about the Rangers, they won 3 Stanley Cups before 1940, but then went on a 55-year slump, which, I did the math wrong. I did a 54-year slump. Ultimately, Marc Messier led them to the championship in 1994. He was the team captain, and he made a lot of promises in the playoff run, very Joe Namath-like sort of promises. And, that championship really cemented his legacy as an all-time great in hockey. And the Rangers, they all just to build more connections for you, the Rangers, they kind of innovated the diagonal letters on the jersey thing. That's what their jerseys look like, diagonally spelling Rangers. I don't know why they do it. Maybe they just thought it wouldn't fit the other way. Who knows? But obviously Utah is going to have a similar look on their jerseys. But from what I can tell, and doing a little cursory research, I think the Rangers were the first team to have that look. So that's that. Oh, no. We can't forget the team I think a lot of people in the hockey world love to talk about. They're at the center of a lot of discussions because the city in which they play is sort of the capital of the hockey universe. And I'm talking, of course, about the Toronto Maple Leafs. And if I had to draw a parallel to other teams and other leagues, for those of you who aren't familiar with hockey, I would say the Maple Leafs are like the Dallas Cowboys or the Los Angeles Lakers of the NHL. In that sense, it's very funny when they underachieve. And for the people in Toronto, people who love the Maple Leafs, underachieving means not winning the Stanley Cup. And they've been in agony. They haven't won in quite a while, but they've won the second most of any NHL franchise with 13. And again, it's just some more fun facts about them. The Maple Leafs invented the concept of retiring numbers in professional sports. Yeah, which I thought that was pretty interesting. But as I said, Toronto, Canada is really the capital of the hockey universe. It's obviously the biggest city in Canada, so that makes a lot of sense to me. But the Hockey Hall of Fame is located in Toronto, and many, many great players come out of that city, come out of that area, the Ontario area, and dream of playing for the Maple Leafs. So they kind of have a leg up in free agency. It'd be the same way if if you were a baseball player and the New York, or I guess the Chicago Cubs or the Boston Red Sox, or if you were a football player and the Dallas Cowboys, or if you're a basketball player, this is probably a better example, the Los Angeles Lakers were to give you a call, you'd probably pay pretty close attention. And the Maple Leafs have that same advantage in the NHL. More recently, like their mark culturally, Justin Bieber has done a lot of collaborations with the Maple Leafs. He's from Toronto as well. So I believe he designed their alternate uniform. He was really involved with all the festivities when Toronto hosted the All-Star game this last year. But fun fact, their best player right now is actually an American who's from Arizona. And here's another fun fact. His name's Austin. And here's another fun fact. He spells his name stupidly, as I talked about on a previous episode. I'm talking about Austin Matthews. And his silly parents, Mr. and Mrs. Matthews, decided to name him O.N., which it only makes life harder for me. Like when I go places and I tell the Starbucks barista, what my name is, and she spells it Austin, because maybe she saw an Austin Matthews highlight. That affects me. Okay, it's IN. That's the proper spelling of the name. All right, you should fix that, Mr. Matthews. But anyway, that's all you need to know. And all these teams are going to be making an appearance at the Delta Center this next season. Again, if you talk to a real hardcore hockey person about the original six, you'll hear their ears perk. You'll see their ears perk up, because hockey people really love the history of the game. They know how much these teams mean to the league and to pretty much everybody who knows anything about like hockey. An original six franchise coming to the Delta Center is pretty nuts. And the fact that we'll be seeing them consistently for years to come is something to be really excited about. I'm sure the tickets to see these guys, see any of these six teams, will be a little bit higher than maybe some of the other teams. And again, that's just because these teams have a really special place in a lot of hockey fans' hearts. And these teams have fans literally all over the world. And especially when they play each other, which they do from time to time, obviously, that's a big deal. Hockey night in Canada, when an original six team is playing against another original six team, that's a big deal. And so I think it's pretty cool that our team is going to be a part of that. If you want to get into hockey, you're excited about what's coming, I definitely recommend getting into the history of the sport. It is very interesting. There are a lot of great personalities. You'll recognize why a lot of the trophies are named the way they are, like the Rocket Richard Trophy, which is given to the guy who scores the most goals in the NHL. That's named after a guy who was a star for the Montreal Canadiens for a long, long time. Rocket Richard, literally his name. But again, if you love hockey now, you want to get into it. Totally. Again, adding on to the things I would recommend doing to really get into it, get the video game, watch some playoff hockey, and read a little bit about the history. Get a book. They still make those. I remember when I was a little kid. Getting hockey books was like a big deal for me. I think I'm sure I've said this on the show, but I remember the librarian at J. Taylor Elementary ordered hockey books for the Scholastic Book Fair just because she knew that mom and dad were going to buy them for me. So that was a savvy move by you, Mrs. Clark. Appreciate that. But again, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. This episode seemed to go much better than the last one, and I mentioned this at the top of the show. Episode 22 was an unmitigated disaster. I recorded the whole thing the first time without knowing that my Rodecaster wasn't plugged in, so I was effectively just mouthing the whole time on video. But I re-recorded and all that, only to find out that I made another gigantic mistake throughout the entire episode. Yeah, I mispronounced Daniil Butt's name the entire time. His name is not Butt, it's Boot. Daniil Boot is his name. But in all fairness, these names are crazy. Like all these hockey names, these guys from Europe and all that, they have like wild names. Even the names that look easy aren't. B-U-T, that's Butt, okay? It should be Butt, just be Butt. No, I'll call you Mr. Boot, okay? You're Mr. Boot, Daniil Boot, and excited to see you lace them up for the Utah Hockey Club. So again, big thanks to you guys. Please like, comment, subscribe. Check out the merch at slcpuck.shop. You guys rock. We'll talk to you later.